The winter of 1882 had been particularly cruel to the Montana Territory, and Samuel Hartley felt every bitter day of it in his bones. The 43-year-old widower stood at the frost-covered window of his modest ranch house, watching the sun sink behind the jagged peaks of the Rockies. 3 years had passed since consumption took his Mary, and the silence that filled their home had become both his companion and tormentor. Sam's weathered hands wrapped around a tin cup of lukewarm coffee as he surveyed his land. The Bar H Ranch wasn't much to look at. 60 acres of stubborn grassland, a dozen head of cattle, and buildings that groaned against the relentless wind. But it was his, bought with sweat and sacrifice, and it held memories in every board and nail. The evening chores beckoned. Sam pulled on his heavy coat, its wool worn thin at the elbows, and stepped into the biting cold. His breath formed clouds in the air as he made his way to the barn, boots crunching through the fresh snow that had fallen throughout the day. The cattle needed hay, and the horses required their evening grain. These routines kept him anchored when grief threatened to pull him under. As he approached the barn, something made him pause. The door, which he distinctly remembered latching that morning, stood slightly ajar. Sam's hand instinctively moved to the Colt .45 on his hip. In these parts, an open barn door could mean anything from a curious coyote to something far more dangerous. He pushed the door wider, hinges protesting with a long creak. The familiar scents of hay, leather, and horse hesh greeted him. But there was something else, something that didn't belong. Sam lit the lantern hanging by the entrance, its warm glow pushing back the gathering darkness. "Who's there?" His voice, rough from disuse, echoed in the barn's rafters. No answer came, only the soft nickering of his mare, Buttercup, and the rustling of mice in the grain bins. Sam moved deeper into the barn, lantern held high, checking each stall. Everything appeared normal until he reached the last one, where they stored extra hay for the harsh months ahead. There, nestled in the golden straw like a baby bird fallen from its nest, lay a child. Sam's heart nearly stopped. A little girl, no more than 7 or 8 years old, curled into herself for warmth. Her thin coat was inadequate for the Montana winter, and her small face, even in sleep, showed the pinched look of hunger. Dark hair spilled across the hay, tangled with bits of straw and dust. For a moment, Sam couldn't move. The sight transported him to another time, another child, the daughter he and Mary had lost to scarlet fever before her 2nd birthday. He shook his head, banishing the painful memory, and knelt beside the sleeping form. The child stirred at his approach, eyes fluttering open to reveal the deepest brown Sam had ever seen, like rich earth after rain. Fear flashed across her features as she scrambled backward, pressing herself against the barn wall. "Easy there, little one," Sam said, setting the lantern down and raising his hands to show he meant no harm. "I ain't gonna hurt you." The girl watched him with the wariness of a trapped animal, her small body trembling, whether from cold or fear. Sam couldn't tell, probably both. "My name's Sam Hartley. This here's my barn you're sleeping in." He kept his voice low and gentle, the same tone he used with spooked horses. "What's your name?" The child remained silent, those enormous eyes never leaving his face. "You hungry, I bet you are. When's the last time you had a proper meal?" Still no response, but Sam saw the way her gaze flickered at the mention of food. "Tell you what," he continued, settling back on his heels to appear less threatening. "How about we go up to the house? I got some stew on the stove. Nothing fancy, but it's hot and filling. You can warm up by the fire, and nobody's gonna ask you any questions you don't want to answer." "Deal." Minutes passed in silence. The wind howled outside, rattling the barn walls and sending icy drafts through the gaps in the boards. Finally, almost imperceptibly, the girl nodded. Sam stood slowly and offered his hand. "Come on then, let's get you inside before you catch your death." The child hesitated, then placed her small, ice-cold hand in his calloused one. As Sam helped her to her feet, he noticed her worn shoes, the soles nearly worn through, and the way she favored her left foot. They made their way to the house, Sam shortening his stride to match her limping gait. The girl clutched a small cloth bundle to her chest, apparently her only possession in the world, once inside. Sam guided her to the rocking chair by the fireplace, the same one where Mary used to sit in the evenings, working on her needlepoint. "You sit here and thaw out," he said, adding another log to the dying fire. "I'll fetch that stew." In the kitchen, Sam's hands shook slightly as he ladled the rabbit stew into 2 bowls. What in God's name was a child doing alone in his barn? Where were her people? The questions churned in his mind, but he pushed them aside. First things first, the girl needed food and warmth. When he returned to the main room, he found her exactly where he'd left her, still clutching her bundle, staring into the flames. Sam handed her the bowl and a spoon, then settled into his own chair across from her. The child fell upon the food like she hadn't eaten in days, which, Sam reflected grimly, might well be the case. He ate his own meal slowly, studying her over the rim of his bowl. Despite the dirt and exhaustion, he could see she was a pretty child, with delicate features that spoke of good breeding. This was no farmer's daughter. That much was certain. "My name's Clara," she said suddenly, so quietly Sam almost missed it. "Clara," he repeated. "That's a right pretty name. You got a last name to go with it." The girl's spoon paused halfway to her mouth, and something shuddered in her expression. Just Clara. Sam didn't push. He recognized the look of someone running from something or someone. He'd seen it often enough in these frontier towns, where folks came to disappear and start over. "Well, just Clara. You're welcome to stay the night. That old couch there pulls out into a bed. Tomorrow, if the weather holds, we can figure out about getting you where you need to go." Clara's knuckles whitened as she gripped her spoon. I don't have anywhere to go." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with unspoken stories. Sam felt his heart constrict. No child should have to say those words, should have that lost look in their eyes. "Then I reckon you can stay here until you do," he heard himself saying. "Lord knows this place could use some life in it again." For the first time, the ghost of a smile touched Clara's lips. It was gone in an instant, but Sam had seen it, and something long frozen in his chest began, ever so slightly, to thaw. As the evening wore on, Sam found blankets and an old nightshirt of Mary's that would serve as a nightgown. He showed Clara where the wash basin was and gave her privacy to clean up and change. When she emerged, face scrubbed and hair somewhat tamed, she looked even younger and more vulnerable. Sam made up the couch, trying not to think about how natural this felt, how right it seemed to have a child in the house again. As Clara settled under the quilts, her eyelids already drooping, Sam banked the fire for the night. Mr. Sam," her voice was drowsy but tinged with fear. You won't tell anyone I'm here, will you?" The question sent a chill through Sam that had nothing to do with the winter cold. "No, Clara, your secret's safe with me." She nodded, satisfied, and closed her eyes. Within minutes, her breathing deepened into sleep. Sam stood watching her for a long moment, this mysterious child who had literally blown into his life on a winter wind. Then he retreated to his own room, but sleep eluded him. He lay staring at the ceiling, listening to the house settle around him, no longer quite so empty as it had been just hours before. Outside, the snow began to fall again, covering the small footprints that led to his barn, erasing all trace of Clara's arrival. But Sam knew, with a certainty that surprised him, that come morning, everything would be different. The lonely rhythm of his days had been broken, and though he didn't yet understand why or how, he sensed that Clara's presence was no accident. In the darkness, he whispered a prayer, the first in 3 years, for wisdom and strength for whatever lay ahead, because something told him that Clara's story, whatever it was, had only just begun. The pale morning light filtered through the frost-etched windows when Sam woke, his internal clock as reliable as any rooster. For a moment, he lay still, wondering if the previous night had been a dream. Then he heard it, the soft sound of breathing from the main room, and the memories rushed back. Clara. Sam dressed quietly and made his way to the kitchen, careful not to wake his unexpected guest. Through the doorway, he could see her small form still curled on the couch, the quilts pulled up to her chin, in sleep. She looked even younger, more fragile. Whatever had driven her to seek shelter in his barn must have been terrible indeed. He set about preparing breakfast with more care than usual. The last of the bacon sizzled in the cast-iron skillet, and he scrambled eggs with a splash of milk from yesterday's milking. The coffee pot gurgled on the stove, filling the kitchen with its rich aroma. Sam even found himself humming, something he hadn't done since Mary's passing. The smell of cooking food must have roused Clara, for when Sam turned to set the table, she stood in the doorway, still wearing Mary's old nightshirt, her cloth bundle clutched protectively against her chest. "Morning," Sam said, noting how she positioned herself to keep both him and the door in sight. "Breakfast is nearly ready. You can wash up at the basin there if you like." Clara nodded but didn't move immediately. Her eyes swept the kitchen, taking in every detail, the worn wooden table, the simple shelves holding dishes and preserves, the rifle mounted above the door. Sam recognized the behavior of someone cataloging exits and potential threats. "There's no need to run," he said gently. "You're safe here." Something flickered across her face. Doubt, perhaps, or hope. She set her bundle carefully on a chair and moved to the wash basin. Sam busied himself with plating the food, giving her space. They sat across from each other at the small table, the silence broken only by the clink of forks against plates. Clara ate steadily but with better manners than her hunger would suggest. Someone had taught this child proper behavior, Sam observed. She was no street urchin. "This is very good," Clara said softly, the first words she'd spoken that morning. "Thank you, Mr. Sam." "Just Sam is fine, and you're welcome." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "I need to tend to the animals after breakfast. You're welcome to come along or stay here where it's warm." Clara's fork stilled. I can help. I know about horses and chickens." "That's so." Sam kept his tone light, though his curiosity deepened. "Well, I'd appreciate the help. Gets lonely talking to the animals by myself." A tiny smile ghosted across her features, gone almost before he could register it. They finished their meal in companionable quiet, and Sam showed Clara where she could find clothes that might fit, some old things of Mary's he'd kept, though he couldn't say why. "These are too nice," Clara protested, fingering a simple wool dress. "They're doing no good sitting in a trunk," Sam replied gruffly. Mary would have wanted them put to use, while Clara changed. Sam pulled on his coat and gloves, his mind working over the puzzle she presented. A well-mannered child who knew about farm animals but wore clothes too thin for winter, running from something or someone. Clearly, the protective way she held that bundle suggested it contained something precious or necessary for survival. Clara emerged dressed in the wool dress and an old coat that hung past her knees. She'd braided her dark hair, revealing more of her face in the morning light. Sam could see the purple shadows under her eyes, the hollow of her cheeks that spoke of too many missed meals. Outside, the new snow crunched under their boots as they made their way to the barn. Clara stayed close, but not too close, maintaining that careful distance that spoke of hard-learned caution. The cattle lowed at their approach, breath steaming in the cold air. "You take the water buckets," Sam suggested, pointing to the pump. "I'll throw down hay from the loft." Clara nodded and set to work with a competence that confirmed she hadn't lied about knowing farm chores. She worked steadily, quietly, occasionally murmuring to the animals in a voice too low for Sam to catch the words. The horses responded to her gentle touch, and even Sam's temperamental rooster seemed less inclined to attack with her around. It wasn't until they were gathering eggs that Clara spoke again. "Your wife, Mary, when did she—" "3 years ago come spring," Sam replied. Surprised by the question, the consumption took her. "I'm sorry." Clara carefully placed an egg in the basket. "My mama died too, last month." Sam's hands stilled. "Last month, in the middle of winter. I'm sorry for your loss, child." Clara shrugged, but Sam saw the way her jaw tightened. "She was sick for a long time. Pa said it was a mercy when God finally took her." "Your PA, is he, dead?" The word came out flat, emotionless. "Died 2 weeks after Mama." Sam felt his chest tighten. This child had lost both parents within weeks and was now alone in the world. No wonder she'd sought shelter wherever she could find it. But something nagged at him, the way she'd asked him not to tell anyone she was here, the fear that never quite left her eyes. "You have any other family, aunts, uncles, grandparents?" Clara's hand trembled slightly as she reached for another egg. "No, it was just us." They finished the chores in silence, Sam's mind churning. By the time they returned to the house, the sun had climbed higher, casting long shadows across the snow-covered ground. Sam added wood to the fire while Clara stood uncertainly by the door, as if unsure whether she was truly welcome to stay. "How about some hot cider?" Sam offered. "Mary used to make it with cinnamon sticks. Recipes around here somewhere." Clara's eyes brightened slightly. "I'd like that." As Sam heated the cider, he watched Clara from the corner of his eye. She'd settled in the rocking chair again, her precious bundle in her lap. Now, in better light, he could see it was a flour sack, tied with twine. Whatever was inside couldn't be much. The bundle was too small. "Clara," he said carefully, bringing her a mug of steaming cider, "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be truthful with me." The girl's fingers tightened on the mug, but she nodded. "Are you in some kind of trouble? Is someone looking for you?" Clara stared into her cider for so long Sam thought she wouldn't answer. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "I don't know. Maybe." "Maybe?" She looked up at him then, and the fear in those brown eyes made Sam's heart clench. "There was a man, after Papa died. He said Papa owed him money, a lot of money, and that I had to come with him to work it off." Sam felt his jaw tighten. He'd heard of such arrangements, children bound to service to pay their parents' debts. Legal, perhaps, but barely a step above slavery in his opinion. "This man have a name?" Clara shook her head. "Papa just called him Mr. Silas. He came to the house the day after we buried Papa. Said I belonged to him now." "So you ran?" A nod. "That night, I took what I could carry and left. I've been walking ever since, sleeping in barns and sheds when I could find them. Yours was the first that had hay, and it didn't smell like—" She trailed off, but Sam could fill in the blanks. Didn't smell like drink or danger or the kinds of men who might harm a child alone. "You did right," Sam said firmly. "No man has the right to claim a child like property, debts or no debts." Clara's eyes filled with tears she refused to let fall. "But what if he finds me? What if he comes here? I don't want to bring trouble to you. Mr. Sam, you've been so kind." "Let me worry about that." Sam's voice came out rougher than intended. "Any man wants to take you from here, he'll have to go through me first. And I'm not as easy to move as I might look." For the first time since he'd found her, Clara truly smiled. A real, genuine smile that transformed her thin face. It lasted only a moment before caution reasserted itself. But Sam had seen it, and it strengthened his resolve. "Now then," he said, settling back in his chair. "Seems to me we need to establish some things. First off, you're welcome here as long as you need. Second, if you're staying, you'll need proper clothes and shoes for winter. Those won't last another week." "I can't take charity," Clara said quickly. I'll work for my keep. Never said you wouldn't. Place like this always needs extra hands. But you're a child, not a hired hand. You'll do chores, sure, but you'll also rest when you need to and eat regular meals. Agreed. Clara nodded slowly, as if she couldn't quite believe her good fortune. One more thing, Sam added. That bundle you're carrying, anything in there you need, anything that needs tending. Clara clutched the sack tighter. It's just things from home, nothing valuable. Sam recognized the lie but didn't press. Whatever was in that sack, Clara would share it when she was ready. Or not at all. Trust, he knew, had to be earned, especially from a child who'd learned the world could be cruel. All right then. How about we go into town tomorrow, get you those clothes and shoes. Maybe stop by the general store for some peppermint sticks if you've got a sweet tooth. Town. The fear was back, sharp and immediate. But what if someone recognizes me? What if he's put out word? Sam considered this. It was possible, even likely, that this Mr. Silas would search for Clara. A child represented valuable property to men of his ilk. But Sam also knew that keeping her hidden forever wasn't practical or healthy. We'll be careful, he promised. You can wear Mary's old bonnet covers most of your face. We'll say you're my niece from back east. Come to help with the ranch. People around here mind their own business mostly. Clara bit her lip, clearly torn between fear and the need for proper winter clothing. Finally, practicality won. All right, but if I see him... We leave immediately, Sam assured her. No questions asked. The rest of the day passed quietly. Sam showed Clara around the small ranch, pointing out boundaries and landmarks. She absorbed information like a sponge, asking intelligent questions about the cattle and the lay of the land. When evening came, they prepared dinner together, simple fare of beans and cornbread, but filling. As night fell and Clara prepared for bed, she paused at the couch. Mr. Sam, why are you helping me? You don't know me. I could be lying about everything. Sam looked at the earnest young face and felt something shift in his chest. Maybe because I remember what it's like to be alone and scared. Maybe because this house has been empty too long. Or maybe because sometimes folks just need to help each other. That's what makes us human. Clara considered this, then nodded as if it made perfect sense. Good night, Mr. Sam. Good night, Clara. As Sam lay in his bed that night, he found himself planning for tomorrow. The trip to town, the supplies they'd need, the story they'd tell, for the first time in 3 years. He was thinking beyond the next chore, the next meal, the next empty day. Clara might have arrived seeking shelter, but she'd given him something in return. Purpose. Outside, the wind howled across the plains, but inside the little ranch house, 2 souls who'd found each other by chance settled into sleep, each a little less alone than they'd been the night before. The weeks that followed Clara's arrival brought a rhythm to the Bar H ranch that Sam hadn't realized was missing. Winter slowly loosened its grip on the Montana territory, and with each passing day, the strange child who'd appeared in his barn became less of a mystery and more of a blessing. Their trip to town had gone smoothly enough. Clara, hidden beneath Mary's deep bonnet, had attracted little attention as they visited the general store. Mrs. Henderson, the shopkeeper's wife, had cooed over Sam's niece from back east and helped select proper winter clothes, 2 wool dresses, thick stockings, sturdy boots, and a coat that actually fit. Clara had tried to protest at the expense, but Sam waved her concerns away. What good was money sitting in the bank when a child needed warmth? Now, 3 weeks later, Sam watched Clara from the kitchen window as she scattered feed for the chickens, her voice carrying on the crisp morning air. She was singing, actually singing, a hymn he recognized from his church-going days. Rock of Ages had been one of Mary's favorites. The change in the child was remarkable. Regular meals had put color back in her cheeks and a bit of meat on her bones. The haunted look had faded from her eyes, replaced by something that might have been contentment, if not quite happiness. She still startled at unexpected sounds and kept that flour sack bundle always within reach. But she smiled more often now, and her laughter, rare but genuine, was like music in the quiet house. Sam had learned her ways, too. Clara rose with the sun, eager to help with chores. She had a gentle hand with animals and a quick mind for figures. She'd taken over keeping track of the egg count and calculating what they'd fetch at market. In the evenings, she'd sit by the fire, sometimes mending clothes with surprising skill, sometimes just staring into the flames with thoughts far away.
"Mr. Sam,"
Clara's voice broke through his reverie.
"Buttercup's acting strange."
Sam grabbed his jacket and hurried to the barn, where he found Clara standing outside Buttercup's stall. The mare was indeed behaving oddly, pawing at the ground and tossing her head. "Colic, maybe," Sam muttered, entering the stall carefully. "Clara, fetch that bottle of liniment from the shelf, and heat some water." They worked together for the next hour, Sam walking the mare slowly while Clara prepared warm compresses. Her small hands were steady as she helped apply the treatment, showing no fear of the large animal's distress. "You've done this before," Sam observed. Clara nodded.
"Papa's horse got sick once. He showed me what to do."
A shadow crossed her face at the mention of her father, but it passed quickly.
"Will she be all right?"
"I think so. We caught it early, thanks to you." By midday, Buttercup was improving, and they sat together on hay bales, sharing bread and cheese, watching the mare rest. "I've been thinking," Sam said carefully. "Spring's coming. Might be time to consider schooling for you." Clara's whole body tensed.
"I can't go to school? What if someone asks questions? What if—"
"Easy now," Sam soothed. "I wasn't thinking of sending you to town school, but Mrs. Whitman, the pastor's wife, she used to be a teacher. I bet she'd come out here once or twice a week, private-like. You're smart as a whip. Clara, be ashamed to waste that mind." Clara considered this, absently braiding pieces of straw.
"I can already read and write. Mama taught me.
And I know my numbers." "I'm sure you do. But there's more to learning than that. History, geography, maybe some Latin if Mrs. Whitman remembers it." Sam smiled. "Mary always said education was the best gift you could give a child." "Did you and Mary have children?" The question was tentative, as if Clara feared overstepping. Sam's chest tightened, but the pain was duller now, bearable. "We had a daughter, Elizabeth. She died of scarlet fever before her second birthday."
"I'm sorry."
Clara's hand found his, small and warm.
"I had a brother, Thomas. He was just a baby when—"
She trailed off, but her meaning was clear. They sat in companionable silence, two souls bound by loss. Sam marveled at how natural it felt, this quiet understanding between them. In just a few weeks, Clara had filled spaces in his life he hadn't even known were empty. That evening, as they prepared supper together, Clara surprised him by pulling out a small wooden box from her ever-present bundle. "I want to show you something," she said, setting the box on the table with reverence. Inside were a few precious items, a silver locket with a miniature painting of a woman who could only be Clara's mother, a man's pocket watch, some letters tied with ribbon, and a small leather journal. "These were my parents," Clara explained, touching each item gently. "The watch was Papa's father's, the locket was Mama's, and this," she held up the journal.
"Papa wrote in this about his business."
Sam recognized the trust she was showing him and felt honored by it.
"They're beautiful keepsakes."
Clara bit her lip.
"There's something else, about Mr. Silas."
She opened the journal, pointing to entries in a neat, masculine hand.
"Papa wrote about the loans. The interest kept growing,
even when he paid. And here." She turned pages.
"He wrote about overhearing Mr. Silas talking about other families,
Other children. Sam's blood ran cold as he read the entries. This wasn't just about one debt. If Clara's father's suspicions were correct, Silas was running a scheme lending money at impossible interest rates, then claiming the children when families couldn't pay. Clara, this is important. Do you know Mr. Silas's full name, where he operates from? She shook her head. Papa was careful never to write it down. He was scared. I think, especially after Mama got sick and he couldn't work as much. Sam closed the journal carefully. You did right showing me this. We'll keep it safe, just in case. That night, Clara had one of her nightmares. Sam woke to the sound of her crying out, words muffled but the terror clear. He found her tangled in the quilts, tears streaming down her face. Clara, wake up. You're safe. It's just a dream. Her eyes flew open, wild and unfocused. For a moment, she didn't seem to recognize him. Then reality returned, and she collapsed against him, sobbing. He was here, Mr. Silas. He said I had to go with him. He said you couldn't stop him. Sam held her carefully, feeling her trembling. Just a dream. He's not here. You're safe. But what if he finds me? What if... Then we'll face it together, Sam said firmly. I've told you before, nobody's taking you anywhere you don't want to go. Not while I'm drawing breath. Clara pulled back to look at him, searching his face. Whatever she found there seemed to reassure her. Promise. Promise. She settled back onto the couch, and Sam sat in his chair, keeping watch until her breathing evened out. Only then did he return to his room, but sleep eluded him. The journal entries troubled him. If there were other children in danger. The next morning dawned bright and clear, the first real hint of spring in the air. Clara seemed to have shaken off the nightmare, throwing herself into the day's work with enthusiasm. They repaired a section of fence that winter had damaged, Clara holding boards while Sam hammered. She'd taken to wearing trousers for such work, another of Mary's alterations, and Sam had to smile at the sight of her. Sleeves rolled up, face smudged with dirt, looking every inch the ranch hand. I love it here, Clara said suddenly, apropos of nothing. I know I shouldn't say that, with Mama and Papa gone, but I do. It feels like home. Sam's hammer paused mid-swing. This is your home, for as long as you want it. Even when I'm grown. Even then. Clara smiled, bright as the spring sun. Then I'll stay forever. That afternoon, they had an unexpected visitor. Reverend Whitman rode up, his black coat dusty from the trail. Sam tensed, but the Reverend's smile was warm. Sam, good to see you. And this must be your niece I've heard about. Clara dropped a small curtsy, playing her role. Clara, sir. I've come with a proposition, the Reverend said, accepting Sam's offer of coffee. My wife mentioned you might be interested in lessons for Clara. She's quite excited at the prospect. It's been years since she had a pupil. They arranged for twice-weekly lessons to begin the following week. Clara tried to contain her excitement, but Sam could see it bubbling beneath the surface. After the Reverend left, she practically danced around the kitchen. Real lessons with a real teacher. She stopped suddenly, looking stricken. But I don't have money to pay. Already settled, Sam said. I'll help Mrs. Whitman with her garden come planting season. Fair trade. Clara launched herself at him, wrapping her arms around his waist in a fierce hug. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Sam stood frozen for a moment, then slowly returned the embrace. It was the first time she'd hugged him, the first time she'd initiated any physical affection. He felt something crack open in his chest, a warmth spreading through him that had nothing to do with the fire crackling in the hearth. That evening, as they sat together after supper, Clara reading aloud from one of Mary's books while Sam mended harness leather. He realized the truth of it. This slip of a girl who'd blown into his life on a winter wind had become as essential to him as breathing. The daughter he'd lost, the family he'd mourned. Somehow, Impossibly, he'd been given a second chance. "Mr. Sam," Clara looked up from her book. "Do you think Mama and Papa would be happy that I'm here with you?" Sam set down his work, considering, "I think they'd be grateful you found somewhere safe, somewhere you're cared for."
"I think so too,"
Clara said softly.
"I think they sent me here, like how Mary sent you me."
The simple faith in those words made Sam's eyes burn. He cleared his throat roughly. "Could be you're right about that." Clara smiled and returned to her reading, her voice weaving through the quiet house like a blessing. Outside, the last of winter's snow melted into the earth, making way for spring and new beginnings. And in the small ranch house, two hearts that had known too much sorrow found, in each other, a reason to hope again. The first sign of trouble came on a Tuesday morning in early April. Sam had ridden out to check on the cattle in the far pasture, leaving Clara to tend the vegetable garden they'd started. The sun was climbing high when he spotted the rider on the ridge, silhouetted against the sky like a harbinger of doom. The man sat motionless on his horse, too far away for Sam to make out features, but close enough to be watching the ranch. Sam's hand instinctively moved to his rifle, though he made no aggressive moves. After several long minutes, the rider wheeled his horse around and disappeared over the ridge. Sam's jaw tightened. In all his years on this land, he'd rarely seen travelers take that particular route. It led nowhere useful, unless someone was specifically scouting the Bar H Ranch. He turned Buttercup toward home, urgency prickling at his spine. He found Clara in the garden, humming as she worked the soil. The sight of her, safe and unaware, eased some of his tension, but not all. "Clara," he called, trying to keep his voice casual. "Come inside a moment." She looked up, shading her eyes with one dirt-caked hand. Something in his expression must have alerted her, because her smile faded. "What's wrong?" "Maybe nothing, but I saw someone watching the ranch from the ridge." "Anyone you recognize?" He described the distant figure as best he could. Clara's face went pale beneath its sun-kissed tan. "I couldn't see from here, but Mr. Sam, what if—" "Don't borrow trouble yet," Sam said, though his own concerns mirrored hers. "Could be anyone, drifter, maybe, or someone lost. But we'll be careful. Stay close to the house today." That evening, Sam cleaned his rifle and checked his ammunition. Clara watched from her spot by the fire, her precious bundle in her lap. She'd been quiet since he'd told her about the rider, the old wariness creeping back into her eyes.
"I should leave,"
she said suddenly.
"If it's him, if he's found me, I'm putting you in danger."
"You're not going anywhere," Sam said firmly.
"We don't even know who it was."
"But if it is him, then we deal with it, together, like we agreed." Clara clutched her bundle tighter.
"You don't understand, Mr. Silas. He's not like regular folks. Papa wrote about the men who work for him.
They're bad men, Mr. Sam, real bad." Sam set down his rifle and moved to sit beside her. "I've known bad men. Clara, fought in the war, rode with the cavalry after. I've seen what evil looks like. And I'll tell you something. Evil often wins when good people run. Sometimes you have to make a stand. Even if it costs you everything. Especially then, because some things are worth more than safety. You're under my protection now, and that means something out here." The next 2 days passed without incident, but Sam remained watchful. He kept Clara close, made excuses to postpone her lessons with Mrs. Whitman, and slept with his rifle within reach. On the third night, his vigilance paid off. The horses woke him, nickering nervously in the barn. Sam slipped from bed, pulling on his boots and grabbing his gun. The moon was nearly full, casting silver light across the yard. He eased onto the porch, every sense alert. A shadow moved near the chicken coop, then another by the well. Sam's blood ran cold. Multiple men, moving with purpose toward the house. He stepped back inside, moving quickly to Clara's couch, Clara, wake up! Quiet now! Her eyes flew open, immediately alert. They're here. Get dressed. Quick. Then into the root cellar. She didn't argue, scrambling into her clothes while Sam positioned himself by the window. He counted 3 men, maybe 4. They were spreading out, trying to surround the house. Mr. Sam. Cellar, now. Take your bundle. Clara grabbed her precious flour sack and the journal, then paused. What about you? I'll handle this. Go. She disappeared through the cellar door just as a voice called out from the darkness. Hello, the house. We know you're in there. Hartley, come on out. We just want to talk. Sam didn't recognize the voice, but he heard the lie in it plain enough. State your business. He called back. It's awful late for social calls. We're looking for someone, a girl. Word is you've been harboring a runaway. Don't know nothing about any runaway. Just me here. A different voice, oily and cultured, cut through the night. Come now, Mr. Hartley. Let's not play games. The child's been seen in town. My ward has been missing for weeks, and I'm quite concerned for her welfare. This had to be Silas. Sam's grip tightened on his rifle. Like I said, nobody here but me. I have legal papers, Silas continued. The girl's father owed me a considerable sum. She's bound to my service until the debt is paid. I'm sure you understand the law. I understand plenty. Sam replied, including that no decent man comes calling in the dead of night with armed companions. If you've got legal business, come back in daylight with the sheriff. There was a pause. Then Silas spoke again, his cultured tone slipping. I'm trying to be reasonable. Hartley, the girl belongs to me. Hand her over, and we'll leave peaceable. Make this difficult, and things could go badly for you. That a threat? A promise. You're 1 man. We're 4. And I assure you, my associates are quite skilled in persuasion. Sam smiled grimly in the darkness. Maybe so, but this is my land, my house, and I've got a Henry rifle here with 15 rounds, plus a scattergun loaded with buckshot. First man through that door won't live to regret it. Second might not either. You willing to find out which of your associates wants to die tonight? Movement in the shadows. The men were repositioning, probably planning to rush from multiple directions. Sam shifted to cover the most likely entry point. Last chance. Hartley, the girl, or... Sam's response was to fire a shot through the window, deliberately high but close enough to make his point. The crack of the rifle split the night, followed by cursing and scrambling outside. Next one won't be a warning. Sam called out. For several tense minutes, nothing happened. Then, from the corner of his eye, Sam caught movement at the back door. He swung the rifle around just as the door burst open. The first man through caught a bullet in the shoulder, spinning him around with a cry of pain. The second dove for cover as Sam levered another round. Glass shattered as someone broke the front window. Sam grabbed the shotgun with his free hand, firing blindly at the opening. The buckshot blast drove the attacker back, but now he was fighting on 2 fronts. A third man appeared at the broken window, pistol raised. Sam threw himself sideways as bullets splintered the wooden floor where he'd been standing. He came up firing, the rifle buck familiar against his shoulder. The man at the window jerked and fell back. Enough! Silas's voice cracked with anger. Fall back! Fall back! Sam heard retreating footsteps, groans from the wounded. He stayed low, rifle trained on the doorway, until the sound of horses told him they were leaving. Even then, he waited, counting the minutes until he was sure they were gone. Clara, he called softly. Stay put. I'm checking outside. He did a careful sweep of the property, finding blood trails but no bodies. They'd taken their wounded with them. The chicken coop door hung open, and several birds were missing. Petty revenge, or maybe provisions for the road. Otherwise, the damage was limited to the broken window and door. Sam returned to the house and opened the cellar door. It's safe now. Clara emerged, pale but composed. Her eyes took in the broken glass, the bullet holes, the blood on the floor. "You're hurt." Sam glanced down, noticing for the first time the graze on his arm where a bullet had torn his shirt. "Just a scratch." Clara fetched water and bandages, her hands steady as she cleaned the wound. "They'll be back," she said quietly. "Mr. Silas doesn't give up." "Neither do I." Sam winced as she tied off the bandage. "But you're right. This isn't over. Come first light, we're going to town. Sheriff needs to know what happened here." "The sheriff won't help," Clara said with bitter certainty. "Mr. Silas has papers. Legal papers." "Maybe, but shooting up a man's home in the dead of night isn't legal anywhere. And there's something else." Sam retrieved Clara's father's journal from where she'd set it. "This might interest a lawman, especially if Silas has been working his scheme on other families." Clara looked doubtful but didn't argue. They spent the rest of the night cleaning up glass and boarding the broken window. Sam kept watch while Clara dozed fitfully on the couch, her bundle clutched to her chest. As dawn broke over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of rose and gold, Sam looked at the child he'd come to think of as his daughter. She was exhausted, frightened, but unbroken. The men would be back. He had no illusions about that. Silas had shown his hand, revealed himself as the predator Clara's father had suspected. "We'll get through this," Sam told her as they prepared to leave for town. "Whatever comes, we'll face it together." Clara managed a small smile. "I know. You kept your promise. You didn't let him take me." "And I won't," Sam said firmly. "Not now. Not ever." But as they rode toward town, Clara perched in front of him on Buttercup. Sam couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. Silas had resources, men, and apparently legal documents. Sam had his rifle, his determination, and a fierce love for the child who'd given him back his purpose. It would have to be enough. The sun climbed higher, chasing away the shadows of night, but Sam knew shadows had a way of returning, and when they did, he'd be ready. He'd lost one daughter to illness, beyond his power to prevent. He wouldn't lose another to the greed of evil men. Not while he still drew breath. Sheriff Tom Morrison was a man who'd seen enough of life to be surprised by very little. But as he listened to Sam's account of the night's events, his weathered face grew increasingly grim. Clara sat beside Sam in the sheriff's office, her father's journal clutched in her hands. "Silas Blackwood," the sheriff said finally, and Clara's sharp intake of breath confirmed the name. "I know of him. Operates out of Cedar Ridge, about 40 miles south. Calls himself a businessman, but—" he trailed off, glancing at Clara. "But," Sam prompted. Morrison sighed. "There have been rumors, families losing their children to debt collection, all legal on paper, but it never sat right with me. Problem is, Cedar Ridge is outside my jurisdiction." "What about last night?" Sam asked. "Armed men attacking my home." "That I can do something about. I'll write out. Look at the evidence. But Hartley, if he's got legal papers for the girl—" Clara finally spoke, her voice small but steady. "My papa wrote everything down." She pushed the journal across the desk. "About the loans, the interest that kept growing even when he paid. About other families, too." The sheriff flipped through the pages, his frown deepening. "This is detailed. Your father was a careful man, Miss Clara." He looked up at Sam. "This suggests a pattern of predatory lending, possibly fraud, but proving it would take time. And meantime, he'll keep coming for her." Sam finished. Morrison nodded. "I can deputize some men, provide protection for a few days. But Blackwood's got money and influence. He'll find a judge to side with him eventually." Sam felt Clara trembling beside him. He placed a protective hand on her shoulder. "Then what do you suggest?" The sheriff was quiet for a long moment. "There's a federal marshal who's been investigating similar operations across the territory. Jacob Sterling. Good man, straight as they come. If I could get word to him, show him this journal.
How long would that take?
Week, maybe 2. Can you keep the girl safe that long?
Sam's jaw set with determination.
I'll do what I have to. As they left the sheriff's office, Clara was quiet. They stopped at the general store for supplies, and Sam noticed how she stayed close, her eyes scanning every face, every shadow. Mrs. Henderson greeted them warmly, but Clara barely managed a smile.
On the ride home, she finally spoke.
Papa tried so hard to pay him back, worked himself sick trying, but the interest, it was like trying to fill a bucket with a hole in the bottom. None of that was your fault, Sam said firmly.
I know, but sometimes I wonder, if Papa hadn't borrowed the money for Mama's medicine, maybe they'd both still be alive. Maybe Thomas too.
Can't think like that, Sam said gently.
Your Papa did what he thought best. He loved your Mama, wanted to save her. Nothing wrong with that.
They found the ranch undisturbed, but Sam remained cautious. He moved Clara's sleeping spot from the main room to a small alcove behind the kitchen, harder to see from the windows. He strung empty cans on wire around the property. A crude alarm system, but effective. That evening, as they prepared a simple meal, Clara surprised him with a question. Sam, why don't you have any pictures of Mary? Sam paused in his stirring of the pot. Put them away after she died. Hurt too much to look at them.
Oh.
Clara was quiet for a moment.
I like looking at Mama's picture.
It helps me remember her smile. Sam considered this. After supper, he went to his room and returned with a small framed photograph. Mary looked back at them, young and lovely, her smile captured forever by the photographer's art. She was beautiful, Clara breathed.
Inside and out.
Sam agreed, surprised to find the pain bearable now.
She would have loved you. Clara always wanted a house full of children. Maybe she sent me to you,
Clara said simply,
like I said before.
That night, Sam kept watch while Clara slept. The moon was waning now, providing less light but also less exposure. He thought about Morrison's words, about the federal marshal who might help. 2 weeks seemed an eternity when danger could return any night. The next days passed intense vigilance. Sam taught Clara to shoot his old Navy Colt, her small hands struggling with the weight but her aim surprisingly true. She learned to recognize the sound of approaching horses, to distinguish between normal night noises and potential threats. On the 4th night, the alarm cans rattled. Sam was up instantly, rifle in hand. Clara appeared beside him, the Colt gripped in both hands. Through the window, they saw a lone figure approaching on foot, hands raised.
"Don't shoot, it's Mrs. Whitman."
Sam lowered his rifle, confused.
What was the pastor's wife doing here at night?
He opened the door cautiously. Mrs. Whitman's usually neat appearance was disheveled, her face flushed from hurrying. "Mr. Hartley, I'm sorry to come so late, but I had to warn you. There are men in town asking questions about Clara, offering money for information." Clara made a small sound of distress. Sam guided both women inside, checking the darkness beyond before closing the door. "What kind of questions?" he asked.
"About her habits, where she might hide,
whether you have any weaknesses they could exploit." Mrs. Whitman accepted the water Clara offered with shaking hands. "I'm afraid someone talked, mentioned seeing her help with your shopping, described her well enough."
"Who talked?"
Sam's voice was hard. "The Garrett boy. He's been running with a rough crowd. Always needs money. I'm so sorry. I came as fast as I could." Sam's mind raced. If Blackwood's men knew Clara had been seen in town, they'd intensify their search. The ranch was too exposed, too hard to defend against a determined assault. "Thank you for the warning," he told Mrs. Whitman. "Best you get home now, before anyone notices you're gone."
After she left, Sam turned to Clara. "Pack what you need. We're leaving."
"Where will we go?" I've got a hunting cabin up in the hills. Harder to find, easier to defend. We'll stay there until the marshal arrives." They worked quickly, loading provisions onto the pack horse. Sam left a note for his nearest neighbor, asking him to tend the stock. As they prepared to leave, Clara paused at the door. "This is my fault. I have driven you from your home." "No," Sam said firmly. "This is Blackwood's doing, not yours, and it's just temporary. We'll be back." They rode out under cover of darkness, taking a circuitous route to avoid potential watchers. The cabin was a 5-hour ride into the mountains, along paths Sam knew from years of hunting. Clara rode behind him now, arms wrapped around his waist, her bundle secured to the saddle. As dawn broke, they reached the cabin. It wasn't much, one room with a fireplace, a small loft, basic furnishings, but it was hidden in a grove of pines, with a clear view of the only approach and a stream nearby for water. "It's perfect," Clara said, and Sam could hear the relief in her voice. They spent the day settling in, Sam showing Clara the defensive positions he'd established years ago when tensions with the local tribes had been high. He taught her the emergency routes down the mountain, made her memorize landmarks. That night, as they sat by the small fire, Clara pulled out her mother's locket. "Papa gave this to Mama on their wedding day. She never took it off, even when we had to sell everything else." "Tell me about them," Sam encouraged. "The good memories." So Clara talked, stories tumbling out about Sunday picnics, her mother singing, her father's terrible jokes, about baby Thomas's first laugh, about Christmas mornings when times were better. Sam listened, adding his own memories of Mary when Clara's voice faltered. "You know what I think," Clara said eventually. "I think our families are together now. Mama and Mary are probably friends, watching over us." "I'd like to think that," Sam agreed. A wolf howled in the distance, and Clara moved closer to him. "Mr. Sam, whatever happens, I want you to know. These weeks with you have been the happiest I've been since Mama got sick. You made me feel safe again, like I had a home." Sam's throat tightened. "You'll always have a home with me, Clara, always?" She smiled and leaned against his shoulder, and they sat watching the fire die down to embers. Outside, the mountain night was full of sounds, owls calling, wind in the pines, the distant yip of coyotes. But inside the little cabin, there was warmth and safety and something that felt very much like family. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges. Blackwood was still out there, still hunting. But tonight, they were safe, and Sam would do whatever it took to keep it that way. The federal marshal couldn't come soon enough. They had been at the cabin for 6 days when the peace shattered. Sam had gone to check his snare lines, leaving Clara to tend the fire and prepare their midday meal. The mountain morning was crisp and clear, with no hint of the violence to come. Clara was humming as she stirred the pot of beans, feeling safer than she had since that terrible night at the ranch. The cabin had become a haven, and she'd even started to believe they might wait out the danger in peace. The first sign of trouble was the silence. The birds stopped singing, and the squirrels ceased their chatter. Clara froze, remembering Sam's lessons about the forest's warning signs. She moved quietly to the window, peering through the gap in the shutters. Her heart stopped. 3 men on horseback were approaching through the trees, and even from a distance, she recognized the lead rider's fancy coat. Silas Blackwood had found them. Clara grabbed the Colt revolver Sam had left her, checking that it was loaded. Her hands shook as she remembered his instructions. "If trouble comes while I'm gone, fire 3 shots in the air. I'll hear and come running. Then bar the door and don't open it for anyone but me." She stepped onto the porch and fired 3 times into the sky. The shots echoed through the mountains like thunder. The approaching riders spurred their horses faster. Clara slammed the door and dropped the heavy bar into place, then pushed the table against it for good measure. Through the window, she watched Blackwood and his men dismount just outside effective pistol range. Well, Blackwood's cultured voice carried clearly. "Little Clara, all alone. Where's your protector now?" Clara didn't answer, though her heart was hammering so hard she was sure they could hear it. "Come now, child. Open the door. I've ridden a long way to collect what's mine. Your father's debt must be paid, and you're all that's left of value." "My father owed you nothing," Clara shouted back. "You're a thief and a liar." Blackwood's laugh was cold. "Such spirit. You'll need to learn better manners in my employ. Last chance, Clara. Open the door, or my men will break it down." Clara checked the revolver again. 5 shots left. Not enough against 3 men, but maybe enough to make them cautious. She positioned herself where she could cover the door and the window. "Mister, Sam will be here soon," she called out, "and he's a better shot than any of you." "Then we'd better hurry," Blackwood said to his men. "Take the door." The largest of the men, a brute with a scarred face, approached with an axe. Clara fired through the door, the bullet splintering wood inches from his head. He dove aside, cursing. "The brat's got teeth," he snarled. "Then smoke her out," Blackwood ordered. Clara's blood ran cold. Fire was every mountain dweller's nightmare. She watched in horror as one man began gathering dry brush while another produced a torch. Where was Sam? The shots should have brought him running, unless they'd ambushed him on the trail. The thought made her sick with fear. The men piled brush against the cabin walls. Smoke began seeping through the gaps in the logs. Clara's eyes watered, and she pulled her shawl over her nose and mouth. She had to do something, but what? If she unbarred the door, they'd take her. If she stayed, she'd suffocate. Then she remembered the root cellar. Sam had shown her the trap door hidden under a bearskin rug. It led to a small space for storing preserves, but more importantly, to a tunnel that emerged 20 yards away in a thicket, an escape route from Indian raids, he'd said. Clara grabbed her bundle and her mother's locket, then pulled aside the rug. The trapdoor was heavy, but desperation gave her strength. She dropped into the darkness just as flames began licking at the walls above. The tunnel was narrow and black as pitch. Clara crawled on hands and knees, dirt falling into her hair, roots catching at her clothes. Behind her, she could hear the roar of fire and men shouting. Ahead, a faint light marked the exit. She emerged in the thicket, gasping for clean air. Through the brush, she could see the cabin fully ablaze now, black smoke billowing into the sky. The men were standing well back from the inferno, Blackwood gesturing angrily. "Search the woods," he commanded. "She can't have gone far." Clara crept deeper into the forest, using every bit of woodcraft Sam had taught her. Move slowly, step on rocks when possible, use the wind to carry your scent away. But she was just a child, and these were experienced trackers. She heard them getting closer, their calls to each other marking their positions. Clara pressed herself against a fallen log, trying to become invisible. A twig snapped nearby. "Got tracks here," a voice called. "Fresh ones. Little feet." Clara ran. All attempts at stealth abandoned. She crashed through the underbrush, branches tearing at her dress. Behind her, the men gave chase, their longer legs eating up the distance. She burst into a clearing and saw Sam. He was on the ground, blood seeping from a gash on his head, his rifle several feet away. One of Blackwood's men stood over him, pistol drawn. "Sam!" Clara screamed. The man turned toward her, and in that instant, Sam moved. Despite his injury, he rolled and grabbed the man's legs, bringing him down hard. They grappled in the dirt, fighting for the gun. Clara raised the Colt, trying to get a clear shot, but the men were rolling too quickly. Then Blackwood emerged from the trees behind her. "Enough." He pressed his own pistol to Clara's head. "Everyone stop, or the girl dies." Sam froze, his hands around the other man's throat. Blood ran down his face, and his eyes were wild with desperation. "Let her go, Blackwood." Sam said, "Your quarrel's with me now." "On the contrary," Blackwood said smoothly.
The girl is legally mine. You're just an obstacle." He cocked the pistol. "Release my man, or I'll remove that obstacle permanently." Sam slowly let go and struggled to his feet, swaying slightly. The other man scrambled up, retrieving his gun. "Good," Blackwood said. "Now, Clara, you're coming with me. Try to run again, and Mr. Hartley here will pay the price." "No," Clara said, her voice stronger than she felt. "I won't go. You'll have to shoot me first." Blackwood's face darkened. "Don't test me, child. You're valuable alive. But there are other children, other debts to collect." "Then you'll have to shoot me too," Sam said, moving to stand beside Clara. "Because the only way you're taking her is over my dead body." For a moment, the clearing was silent except for the distant roar of the burning cabin. Clara felt Sam's hand find hers, squeezing gently. If these were their last moments, at least they were together. Then a new voice rang out, "Federal Marshal, everyone drop your weapons." A man in a long duster stepped into the clearing, badge glinting on his chest, rifle steady in his hands. Behind him, Sheriff Morrison and 2 deputies emerged from the trees. "Marshal Sterling," Blackwood said, his composure cracking. "This is a private matter. I have legal documents." "Save it for the judge," Sterling said. "I've been investigating your operation for months. Blackwood, fraud, extortion, trafficking in human misery. Drop the gun." Blackwood's men looked to their boss, uncertain. The silence stretched taut. "Now," Sterling barked. Slowly, Blackwood lowered his pistol. His men followed suit. The deputies moved in, collecting weapons and producing shackles. "You all right, Miss?" Sterling asked Clara. She nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. Sam's arm came around her shoulders, solid and protective. "The cabin," Sam said, gesturing to the smoke rising above the trees. "We saw," Morrison said. "That's what led us here. We were riding up to find you when we saw the smoke." He looked at Blackwood with disgust. "Arson, attempted kidnapping, assault. You've got quite a list building up." As the deputies led Blackwood and his men away, Marshal Sterling approached Sam and Clara. "Miss Clara, I'll need you to testify. Your father's journal, combined with the evidence we've gathered, should be enough to put Blackwood away for a long time. More importantly, any claim he had on you is void." "She'll testify," Sam said, "but she's been through enough. Can it wait a few days?" Sterling nodded. "Sheriff Morrison can take your statements when you're ready. And Hartley, you did good, protecting her. Not many men would have risked what you did." As the lawmen departed with their prisoners, Sam and Clara stood in the clearing. The cabin was gone, along with their supplies and shelter. But they were alive, and Blackwood could no longer hurt them. "I'm sorry about the cabin," Clara said softly. Sam squeezed her shoulder. "It's just wood and nails. What matters is you're safe." "Am I really?" "Yes," Sam said firmly. "It's over. You're free." Clara turned and buried her face against his chest, finally letting the tears come. Sam held her, his own eyes burning. They'd lost the cabin, but they'd gained something far more valuable, a future without fear. "Come on," Sam said eventually. "Let's go home." "Home," Clara repeated, tasting the word like honey. "I like the sound of that." They walked down the mountain together, leaving the smoking ruins behind. Sam's head wound needed tending, and they had a ranch to return to, a life to rebuild. But for the first time since that night in the barn, the shadow that had hung over them was gone. The sun broke through the clouds, warming their faces, and if Sam walked a little taller, and Clara's step was a little lighter, well, they'd earned this moment of peace. They were going home. The courthouse in Cedar Ridge was packed to capacity on the day of the hearing. Word had spread about Silas Blackwood's arrest and the broader investigation into his operations. Families from 3 counties had come, some hoping for justice, others fearing what might be revealed. Sam sat beside Clara on the hard wooden bench.
her small hand clutched in his. She wore her best dress, the blue one they'd bought in town, and her hair was neatly braided. Despite her composed appearance, Sam could feel her trembling. "Remember what Marshal Sterling said?" Sam whispered, "Just tell the truth. That's all anyone's asking." Clara nodded, her eyes fixed on the raised platform where Judge William Thornberry presided. He was an older man with silver hair and keen eyes that missed nothing. Sam had heard he was fair but stern, not easily swayed by wealth or influence. Blackwood sat at the defendant's table, still dressed in his fine clothes but lacking his usual arrogant bearing. His lawyer, a slick man from Denver, shuffled papers nervously. The federal prosecutor, James Morrison, no relation to the sheriff, stood ready with his evidence. "This hearing will determine the validity of custody claims regarding Miss Clara Bennett," Judge Thornberry announced. "We will also hear evidence pertaining to broader charges of fraud and illegal trafficking in minors." The prosecutor called Clara to testify first. Sam gave her hand a final squeeze as she made her way to the witness chair. She looked impossibly small and young, but her voice was clear as she took the oath. "Miss Bennett," the prosecutor began gently, "can you tell us about your father's dealings with Mr. Blackwood?" Clara straightened her shoulders. "Papa borrowed money when Mama got sick. He needed it for medicine and doctor bills. Mr. Blackwood offered to help, said he understood about family troubles." "What were the terms of this loan?" "Papa said it was supposed to be $200 at 10% interest, but somehow it kept growing. Every time Papa made a payment, Mr. Blackwood said there were fees, penalties. The debt got bigger instead of smaller." "Do you have any proof of these payments?" Clara produced her father's journal, which had been entered into evidence. "Papa wrote everything down, every payment, every receipt. He knew something was wrong." The prosecutor guided Clara through the entries, establishing a pattern of predatory lending. Then came the harder questions. "What happened after your parents died?" Clara's voice dropped but remained steady. "Mr. Blackwood came to our house, said I belonged to him now, that I had to work off Papa's debt. He had papers, but I didn't understand them. I was scared, so I ran away." "And you ended up at Mr. Hartley's ranch?" "Yes, sir. I was cold and hungry. I just wanted somewhere safe to sleep. Mr. Hartley, he found me and took care of me. He's been like a father to me." Blackwood's lawyer rose for cross-examination, his smile oily. "Miss Bennett, isn't it true your father signed documents pledging your labor as collateral for his loan?" "I don't know what he signed," Clara said. "Papa couldn't read very well. Mr. Blackwood always said he'd explain the papers, but he used big words Papa didn't understand." "But surely a contract is a contract." "Objection," the prosecutor interrupted. "The literacy of the signatory is relevant to the validity of any contract." Sustained. Judge Thornberry ruled. "Mr. Dalton, you'll have your chance to present the documents." The lawyer tried several more angles, attempting to paint Clara as a runaway trying to escape legitimate obligations. But Clara held firm, and Sam felt proud of her courage. When Clara returned to her seat, Sam put his arm around her. "You did perfect," he whispered. Marshal Sterling testified next, presenting evidence from his investigation. "We've documented similar patterns with 17 families across the territory. Blackwood would target desperate people, usually those with sick family members. The loans were structured to be impossible to repay, with hidden fees and compound interest. When families defaulted, he claimed their children." "And what happened to these children?" the prosecutor asked. Sterling's face was grim. Some were put to work in factories back east. Others were adopted by wealthy families looking for servants. We're still tracking them all down. A murmur ran through the crowd. Several women were crying, clutching worn photographs. "We also found this," Sterling continued, producing a leather-bound ledger. Blackwood's real books, seized from his office safe, They show the true nature of his business, buying and selling children like cattle. When Blackwood's lawyer presented his case, he focused on the signed contracts, arguing they were legally binding regardless of the circumstances. He produced Clara's father's agreement, claiming it clearly stated Clara as collateral. Judge Thornbury examined the document carefully. Mr. Blackwood, did you explain the terms of this contract to Mr. Bennett? Blackwood stood, his composure cracking. I'm a businessman, Your Honor. It's not my responsibility to answer the question. Did you explain that he was signing away rights to his child? The contract speaks for itself. I'll take that as a no. The judge's voice was cold. Mr. Dalton, do you have any witnesses to the signing of this document? The lawyer hesitated. No, Your Honor. Then we have only Mr. Blackwood's word about what was discussed. Judge Thornbury turned to the packed courtroom. Are there any other families here who had dealings with Mr. Blackwood? Slowly, hands began to rise, one by one. People stood to share their stories. A widow whose son had been taken. A father who'd lost 2 daughters. Each tale was similar, desperate people. Impossible debts. Children disappeared. Sam watched Blackwood's face grow paler with each testimony. The man who'd terrorized so many families was finally facing justice. Your Honor, the prosecutor said, we request that all contracts between Mr. and Blackwood and these families be declared null and void due to fraud and unconscionable terms. I'm inclined to agree. Judge Thornbury said, but first, I want to address the custody matter. Mr. Hartley, please approach. Sam made his way to the front, hat in hand. You've been caring for Miss Bennett these past months. Yes, Your Honor, and I'd like to continue doing so, if the court permits. You understand this would be a permanent arrangement. Raising a child is no small responsibility. Sam looked back at Clara, who was watching with hope in her eyes. With respect, Your Honor, Clara and I have been through fire together. Literally, she's given me purpose again after I lost my wife and daughter. I can't imagine life without her now. Miss Bennett, would you like to stay with Mr. Hartley? Clara stood, her voice ringing clear. Yes, Your Honor, he's the only real family I have now. He's saved me, protected me, taught me to be strong. I want to stay with him forever. Judge Thornbury nodded. Very well. I hereby grant full custody of Clara Bennett to Samuel Hartley. As for you, Mr. Blackwood. The judge's voice hardened. I find sufficient evidence of fraud, extortion, and trafficking in minors. You are remanded to federal custody to await trial on these charges. Furthermore, all contracts you hold regarding minor children are declared null and void. Marshal Sterling. I'm ordering you to locate every child taken under these contracts and return them to their families where possible. The courtroom erupted in cheers and sobs. Families who'd lost hope suddenly had it restored. As deputies led Blackwood away, he shot one last venomous look at Clara, but she stood tall, unafraid. In the chaos that followed, people pressed forward to shake Sam's hand, to hug Clara, to share their own stories of loss and newfound hope. Through it all, Clara stayed close to Sam's side. But then the prosecutor approached with a leather satchel. Mr. Hartley, we found something else in Blackwood's records you should see. He produced a file marked Bennett. Inside were documents Sam didn't expect, correspondence between Blackwood and other parties, discussing the Bennett family long before the loan. These letters, the prosecutor explained, suggest Blackwood specifically targeted your family. Clara, there's mention here of your mother's family having some valuable property back east. Blackwood seemed to think gaining custody of you would give him claim to it. Clara frowned. Mama never mentioned any property. We were always poor. Nevertheless, these documents suggest there may be an inheritance waiting for you. We'll investigate further. As they prepared to leave, an unexpected figure approached, a woman in her 50s, well-dressed but with kind eyes.
Clara, she said hesitantly. Clara Bennett. Clara turned, confused. Yes, ma'am. The woman's eyes filled with tears. I'm your Aunt Margaret, your mother's sister. I've been searching for you since I heard about Eleanor's passing. Sam instinctively stepped closer to Clara. Protective. Why haven't we heard of you before? Margaret's face was pained. Eleanor and I, we had a falling out years ago. Over money, foolishly enough. I inherited our parents' estate, and Eleanor felt cheated. She cut off contact, moved west. I've regretted it every day since. She looked at Clara with hungry eyes. When I finally tracked down where Eleanor had gone, I learned she'd died, and that you'd disappeared. I've been searching ever since. If this is about claiming Clara, Sam began, but Margaret shook her head. No, Mr. Hartley. I can see she's where she belongs. I wanted to know my niece, to make amends, if possible, and to tell her that she does have an inheritance. Her grandparents set aside a trust for her education and future. Clara looked between Margaret and Sam, uncertain. Sam squeezed her shoulder. It's your choice, Clara. Whatever you decide. After a long moment, Clara spoke. I'd like to know about Mama, about her family, but my home is with Sam now. Margaret smiled through her tears. Of course, perhaps I could visit, get to know you properly. Clara looked up at Sam, who nodded. We'd welcome that, he said. As they finally made their way out of the courthouse, Clara slipped her hand into Sam's. It's really over, isn't it? I'm really free? Free and legal, Sam confirmed. You're officially a Hartley now, if you want to be. Clara stopped walking, looking up at him with shining eyes. Clara Hartley, I like that. So do I, Sam said, his voice rough with emotion. They climbed onto the wagon for the journey home, behind them. The courthouse steps were still crowded with reunited families. Justice had been served. Wrongs had been righted, and children would sleep in their own beds tonight. But for Sam and Clara, the greatest victory was smaller and more personal. They had found each other, two lost souls who'd created a family from sorrow and courage. As they rode toward home, Clara began to sing, the same hymn she'd sung that morning weeks ago. This time, Sam joined in, their voices blending in harmony as the sun set behind the mountains. They were going home, truly home, where the past could finally rest and the future stretched bright before them. 6 months had passed since the trial, and the Bar H Ranch had transformed into something neither Sam nor Clara could have imagined. Word had spread about the man who'd stood against Blackwood and the girl he'd saved, and their story had touched hearts across the territory. The morning sun cast long shadows as Sam and Clara worked side by side, expanding the chicken coop. They'd need the space. 3 new children were arriving next week, orphans from a failed mining town whose parents had succumbed to fever. Pass me that hammer, Clara, Sam said, and she obliged, her movements confident and sure. At nearly 9 years old now, she'd grown taller, stronger, her face bright with health and happiness. Do you think the Williamson twins will like sharing a room? Clara asked. I fixed up the loft real nice, put Mama's quilt on one bed and Mary's on the other. Sam smiled at how naturally she'd taken to being a big sister. After the trial, when Marshal Sterling had found more children in need of homes, Clara had been the one to suggest they had room at the ranch. I reckon they'll be grateful for any kindness, Sam said. From what Sterling wrote, they've had a rough time of it. The sound of approaching horses made them both look up. Sheriff Morrison was riding in, accompanied by a woman Sam recognized as Mrs. Davies from the neighboring county. She ran a small orphanage that had been overwhelmed since Blackwood's operation was shut down. Morning, Sam. Clara, Morrison called out. Brought someone to see your setup here. Mrs. Davies dismounted, her sharp eyes taking in the expanded house, the new dormitory building they'd raised with help from neighbors.
the garden where Clara grew vegetables to feed their growing household. "Mr. Hartley," she said, "I've heard remarkable things about what you're doing here. May I?" Sam gestured for her to look around. As they walked, he explained their system. "Children who come here aren't charity cases. They're family. They work according to their age and ability. Learn reading and writing from Mrs. Whitman, and know they're safe for as long as they need." "How many children are here now, Mrs.?" Davies asked. "4, with 3 more coming." Clara piped up. "Tommy and Sarah Brennan, little Jose from the railway camp, and Martha who—" She paused. Remembering Martha's story was particularly hard. "And you fund this how, Mrs.?" Davies pressed. "My wife's inheritance helps," Clara said proudly. "Aunt Margaret set up a trust, and the community helps too. Mr. Anderson brings beef. Mrs. Henderson donates cloth for clothes. Reverend Whitman's congregation takes up collections." "Mrs." Davies nodded approvingly. "I have a proposition. The territorial government has funds allocated for child welfare, but they need responsible people to administer them. Would you consider making this official becoming a recognized sanctuary?" Sam exchanged glances with Clara. They'd talked about this possibility, but hearing it offered was different. "What would that mean exactly?" Sam asked. "Regular inspections, some paperwork, following certain standards." "Mrs." Davies explained. "But also funding for food, clothes, education, and most importantly, legal standing to take in children who need homes." "We'll think on it," Sam said carefully. "Discuss it with the children we have now. This is their home too." After Mrs. Davies left, Sam and Clara sat on the porch, watching the younger children play in the yard. Tommy Brennan was teaching Jose to rope fence posts, while Sarah and Martha collected eggs, their laughter bright as birdsong. "We've come a long way from that night in the barn," Sam mused. Clara leaned against his shoulder. "Do you ever regret it taking me in? All of this?" "Never," Sam said firmly. "You brought life back to this place. Clara, to me, every child we help is a victory against men like Blackwood." "Speaking of which," Clara said, producing a letter from her pocket. "This came yesterday. I wasn't sure when to show you." Sam recognized Marshall Sterling's handwriting. The letter was brief but important. Blackwood had been convicted on all charges and sentenced to 20 years hard labor. More importantly, they'd tracked down and reunited 37 children with their families. "Justice," Sam said quietly. "And mercy," Clara added, gesturing to their makeshift family playing in the yard. That evening, they held their weekly family meeting. All the children gathered around the big table Sam had built to accommodate their growing numbers. Clara, as the eldest, often helped run these meetings. "Mrs. Davies wants to know if we'll become an official sanctuary," Clara explained. "It means more rules, but also more help to take in children who need us." "Would we still be a family?" little Martha asked, her voice worried. "Or would we be an orphanage?" Sam's voice was gentle but firm. "We'll always be a family. That won't change no matter what we call ourselves." The children discussed it earnestly, showing a maturity born from hardship. In the end, they voted unanimously to accept the official status, but only if they could keep doing things their way. 2 weeks later, the ranch was bustling with activity. The Williamson twins had arrived, shy 8-year-olds who clung to each other but were slowly warming to Clara's patient kindness. A baby named Hope, whose mother had died in childbirth and whose father couldn't care for her alone, was being tended by Sarah, who showed surprising skill with infants. Aunt Margaret visited monthly now, bringing books and supplies, sharing stories of Clara's mother that made Clara's eyes shine. She'd offered to take Clara back east for schooling, but Clara had politely declined. "My place is here," she'd said simply. "This is my life's work." Sam had never been prouder. One evening, as the sun set behind the mountains, Sam found Clara in the barn, The same barn where he'd discovered her that winter night. She was sitting in the hay, her father's journal in her lap. "Remembering?" he asked gently. She nodded. "Papa wrote here about his dreams for me. He wanted me to be educated, to be safe, to matter in the world." She looked up at Sam with eyes wise beyond her years. "I think I'm living his dream, just not the way he imagined." "Your parents would be proud," Sam assured her. "You've taken your pain and turned it into purpose." "We both have," Clara corrected. "That's what family does. We heal each other." A commotion from the house drew their attention. The other children were calling for them. Supper was ready. And apparently, Jose had a new joke to share. As they walked back, Clara slipped her hand into Sam's, a gesture that still made his heart full. "Mr. Sam, I've been thinking about what Judge Thornberry said about permanent arrangements." "Oh, I was wondering, could I call you Pa? I mean, if you don't mind. It's just, the other children sometimes ask why I still call you Mr. Sam when you're my father now. And—" Sam stopped walking, his throat tight with emotion. "I'd be honored, Clara, deeply honored." She smiled, that bright smile that had become common but never lost its power to light up his world. "Thanks, Pa." They entered the house together, into the warm chaos of their assembled family. Children's voices rose in laughter and gentle squabbling. The table was set with mismatched plates, laden with food provided by their own labor and their neighbors' generosity. It wasn't fancy, but it was theirs. As Sam said grace, he looked around the table at each young face, some still bearing the shadows of past hurts, but all glowing with the security of being wanted, being home. His voice was rough as he gave thanks for second chances, for the courage of children, and for the mysterious ways love could grow from sorrow. "Amen," chorused 7 young voices, and Clara's was the strongest of all. Later, as the household settled for the night, Sam stood on the porch, looking out at his land. The ranch that had once echoed with emptiness now rang with life. Where he'd once seen only endings, now there were beginnings. Marshall Sterling had written that they'd never found all of Blackwood's victims, that some children remained lost. Sam's jaw set with determination. They had room for more, and as long as there were children who needed sanctuary, the Bar H Ranch would provide it. Clara joined him on the porch, wrapped in Mary's old shawl. The twins asked if they could help with the horses tomorrow. Good. Horses have a way of healing hearts. They stood in comfortable silence, grandfather and daughter in all but blood, watching the stars emerge in the vast Montana sky. "You know what I think," Clara said eventually. "I think every broken heart has room for love to grow, like cracks in the earth where flowers push through." Sam put his arm around her shoulders. "When did you get so wise?" "Must be all that schooling Mrs. Whitman's giving me," Clara said with a grin. Then, more seriously, "Or maybe it's just what happens when someone saves you, and you get the chance to save others in return." The night wind carried the sound of coyotes calling in the distance. But the house behind them was warm and secure, full of sleeping children who'd found their way home. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new children in need, new battles to fight against those who would prey on the innocent. But tonight, there was peace, and in that peace, Sam Hartley, widower, rancher, an unlikely father to a growing brood of rescued souls, knew that Mary would be smiling. Their daughter Elizabeth might have been lost to fever, but in Clara and all the children who followed, her spirit lived on. Love, Sam had learned, wasn't diminished by loss. It grew stronger, wider, deeper, like a river that carved new channels through the hardest stone. And as he and Clara headed inside to check on their sleeping charges one more time, he knew that this was just the beginning. The Bar H Ranch had become more than a sanctuary. It had become a beacon of hope in a hard land. Proof that sometimes the most beautiful families were the ones you chose. and that a widowed cowboy and a frightened girl could indeed change each other's lives, and the lives of so many others, forever. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I hope it touched your heart as much as it did mine. Please comment below and let me know where you're listening from. I love connecting with listeners from around the world. Don't forget to subscribe to the From Wild West channel and share your thoughts about Sam and Clara's journey. What part of their story resonated most with you? Your comments mean everything to us, and they help us know what stories to share next. Until next time, partners.